They say if you stand outside Ravenhurst at midnight, you'll hear a lullaby no one ever wrote, played by hands that aren't there. It began as folklore, a whisper among fishermen who swore the wind carried a child's melody from the far cliffs. But the truth was buried deeper, beneath the floorboards of Ravenhurst Manor, where a single silver music box sat untouched for nearly a century. Dr. Evelyn Hart arrived with microphones and skepticism, expecting echoes, not evidence. Yet the first night she set her recorder by the box, it played. No gears wound, no spring turned, just sound, pure and deliberate. The notes shimmered like breath over glass, sweet but wrong, as if the melody had never belonged to this world. The next morning, Evelyn replayed the recording. The melody fractured into whispers buried under static, forming words too deliberate to be coincidence. Don't open it again. She increased gain, isolating the background frequencies. There were multiple voices, overlapping like echoes in an empty hall. Noah mentioned a legend, the mistress of Ravenhurst who drowned herself after hearing her dead daughter's laughter through the same tune. Evelyn dismissed it as hysteria, but the air itself seemed to hum whenever the playback reached that cursed refrain. By dusk, Evelyn noticed the temperature shifts aligning perfectly with the melody's rhythm. Each low note chilled the air. Each high one made it pulse with static warmth. Noah scoured old maps and found that Ravenhurst stood upon an orphanage site burned in the 1600s. The children's final lullaby, recorded in folklore, matched the same sequence of notes. Evelyn began to suspect that what she'd captured wasn't music, but memory. Alive, recursive, unfinished. When the grandfather clock struck 12 again, the house exhaled. At midnight, the lullaby began again. But this time, it layered itself. A child's voice sang beneath the mechanism, echoing in reverse, harmonizing with something unseen. Evelyn froze as her monitors peeked into static. Noah turned toward the mirror on the wall, swearing he saw movement, bare feet, small and pale, stepping through reflection. Then the music cut short, leaving only one long, rising tone. It lingered in the air, vibrating like a scream pressed behind glass. Dawn broke over Ravenhurst like an exhausted breath. Evelyn stood at the cliff's edge, holding the music box. It pulsed faintly with warmth, though she hadn't wound it. Below, the Atlantic roared in synchronized rhythm, each wave striking stone with perfect timing. The melody still whispered through her drained recorder, notes fading like dying stars. She whispered to the wind that she would return at midnight, as though the promise itself carried weight. The gulls fell silent. The horizon trembled. The second night arrived with a wind that howled like a choir. Evelyn placed her microphones closer to the music box, aligning decibel meters and frequency readers. Midnight came and the melody began again, but this time, her instruments registered notes far below human hearing. Beneath the tune hid another pattern, subsonic pulses that matched the rhythm of a human heartbeat. She filtered the frequencies and found layered harmonics. Children's laughter slowed to inhuman tempo. Noah urged her to stop, yet curiosity devoured fear. When she played the isolated layer aloud, something in the house answered. A low vibration trembled through the walls, and for one moment, every candle flame bent toward the music box, as though the entire room leaned in to listen. Evelyn documented every frequency, marking timestamps and spectral peaks. But when she compared the playback to her notes, the file length had increased by 43 seconds. The extra section contained no audible sound, just silence, until she amplified it. Then came the whisper, soft but certain. "You heard me." Noah recoiled, pale, claiming the house was feeding on attention. Yet Evelyn was entranced, hearing beauty within the distortion. A melody folding space upon itself, impossible and exquisite. She played it again, certain she could trace its source. The whisper grew clearer, forming her own name drawn out like a sigh between the walls. By dawn, exhaustion replaced logic. Evelyn left her recorder running while she slept in a chair. Hours later, playback revealed faint footsteps circling the microphone. Soft, deliberate, belonging to someone light as air. The steps halted near her sleeping form, followed by the unmistakable sound of the box winding itself. Noah confronted her at breakfast, insisting they destroy it. She refused, certain that destruction would sever the link before she understood it. The debate ended abruptly when the music began again, this time from the recorder's speaker, though it was switched off. The following night, Noah attempted to record environmental sounds outside Ravenhurst, but his devices malfunctioned near the manor's perimeter. Inside, Evelyn noticed the melody had changed key. The tune ascended in minor intervals, evoking both sadness and awe. She realized the composition was mathematically precise, each note forming ratios common in astrophysical resonance, not human music. Her hands trembled as she wrote the intervals down. When she stopped, the pencil rolled off the table, spelling an accidental cadence of 3 knocks. The house seemed to echo it in return, one hollow tap for each of hers. At exactly midnight, Evelyn isolated the subsonic frequency again and played it through her laptop speakers. The entire manor responded. Windows rattled, the floorboards flexed, and faint vibrations climbed the staircase. Noah shouted over the noise, demanding she shut it off. But Evelyn's eyes were locked on the screen. The waveform undulated as though alive, its peaks forming shapes. Letters, her own handwriting mirrored across the axis. Then came the faint hum of the music box, though it was closed. When the lights cut out, Evelyn whispered, trembling, "It's learning." By the third night, Ravenhurst no longer felt abandoned. The walls pulsed faintly to the beat of the melody, like a living lung. Evelyn cataloged every occurrence, the notes, the electrical surges, the EMF spikes, but none explained why her recorder now contained new audio she hadn't captured. A faint humming, perfectly synchronized to her own breath. When she slowed it down, the voice that emerged was unmistakably hers, singing the lullaby she'd only ever heard from the box. Noah found her trembling in the dark, ear pressed to the floorboards, whispering that something beneath was answering. The melody had become circular, playing her voice back before she'd ever spoken the words aloud. Noah pleaded for them to leave. He claimed the melody wasn't summoning ghosts, it was building them. The tones, he theorized, were acoustic molds forming something inside the sound itself. Evelyn, drawn by the haunting beauty, ignored his warnings and played the recording backward. What emerged was a voice, unmistakably a child's, whispering a single phrase, "She's still here." Evelyn froze, recognizing her mother's lullaby woven into the inverted notes. Emotion flooded reason. She whispered back to the recording, asking who was there. The reply came instantly, overlapping her own words. Her own voice, answering from the past. At midnight, the melody began before either of them approached the box. The air in the manor thickened, saturated with a metallic scent, like struck piano strings. Evelyn's equipment switched on by itself, meters peaking to red. The child in white appeared at the threshold, her bare feet leaving no impression on the dust. She tilted her head, eyes reflecting candlelight like silver coins. The music swelled into an unfamiliar counterpoint, a harmony Evelyn had never recorded. Noah backed away, whispering prayers under his breath. The child extended her hand toward the music box, and though no one touched it, the lid opened with a sigh. The next day, Evelyn combed through the recording, frame by frame. There was no sign of the child, only sound. Layered frequencies forming a shape in the spectrogram, the outline of a human face. She stared, transfixed, as the waveform seemed to breathe. When Noah demanded she delete it, the file corrupted on its own. The audio replaced by silence, but beneath that silence lingered faint rhythm. 3 soft knocks repeating at 10-second intervals. Evelyn traced the knocks to a frequency identical to her heartbeat. It wasn't random. It was her echo, stitched into the recording. Night fell again, and exhaustion blurred into obsession. Evelyn wound the music box one final time before sleep. The melody began gently, but halfway through it shifted, repeating the same phrase endlessly. 4 notes, each echoing slower than before, until the final repetition aligned perfectly with her breathing. Then, silence. The air grew still. Noah reached for her shoulder, but she was already moving toward the parlor mirror as if summoned. In its reflection, her mouth moved to the rhythm of the lullaby, though she made no sound. The reflection smiled first. Noah spent the following morning buried in the town archives, searching for any mention of the lullaby. He found a brittle manuscript dated 1671. Its ink faded to brown. It spoke of the choir of the threshold, a sect of composers who believed that specific harmonies could open doors between the living and the dead. The melody's notation matched perfectly with the music box tune, transcribed in an archaic form of psalmization. Each verse corresponded to a lunar phase, ending with the phrase, "When the heart mirrors the sky, the gate shall listen." Noah returned to Ravenhurst pale and trembling, carrying proof that the song wasn't just haunted, it was ritual. Evelyn listened in silence, her eyes unfocused, as the melody hummed faintly from somewhere inside the walls. The deeper Noah read, the more the symbols aligned. He found sketches of instruments designed not for performance, but for invocation, each tuned to the resonance of human anatomy. One diagram showed a heart surrounded by musical notation, lines connecting chambers to tones. Evelyn recognized the same design etched faintly inside the music box lid. She theorized that the box didn't produce sound, it amplified consciousness. When she suggested playing the tune during the next lunar phase, Noah's voice broke. He told her that the last known choir had vanished after their final composition, their bodies found perfectly preserved, mouths frozen in song. Evelyn replied quietly, maybe they were heard. That night, thunder rolled across the cliffs. Evelyn set up her recorders again, this time placing one outside the manor to test if the sound carried beyond the walls. When she played it back, she heard her own voice counting in perfect rhythm with the thunder. 1, 2, 3, 4. She hadn't spoken. The pattern repeated, building to a steady pulse, matching the box's rhythm. Noah, standing by the door, said softly that he could hear breathing behind the storm. Evelyn pressed the headphones closer. There it was. Another layer of melody, deep and wet, as though sung underwater. Noah began piecing together the cult's final ritual from his notes. The threshold choir believed that when a melody was played perfectly, the barrier between worlds would reverse polarity, sound becoming matter, memory becoming flesh. He realized the song wasn't summoning the dead. It was reconstructing them. Evelyn listened, half entranced, half terrified, as he explained that the missing children from the orphanage fire might have been part of the first attempt. The lullaby, he said, was their unfinished bridge. Evelyn looked toward the music box and whispered, "Then what happens when the bridge completes?" At midnight, the box played by itself once more. The melody rose through the manor like breath through a pipe organ, each note trembling the walls. Noah's papers fluttered from the desk, his candles extinguishing one by one. Evelyn stood motionless, entranced. The song had changed key again, climbing higher, folding on itself until the air shimmered. Her reflection in the darkened window opened its mouth and sang along. Seconds ahead of her, Noah shouted her name, but she didn't move. The last note struck, and the manor exhaled. Every door unlocked at once. The storm broke just before dawn. The manor sat in eerie stillness, rainwater coursing down its walls like veins. Evelyn awoke to find her recorder running again, though she hadn't touched it. The playback revealed footsteps leading from the parlor to the cliffs, followed by a faint lullaby. now slowed almost to a heartbeat. Noah argued that they should leave before nightfall, but Evelyn's voice carried conviction colder than reason. "She's showing me where it ends." Outside, fog smothered the horizon. The child in white appeared at the edge of the field, her outline dissolving in mist, head tilted as though waiting. Evelyn followed without a word, her recorder still humming in her coat pocket. The path toward the cliff seemed longer than before, stretching through meadows that shouldn't exist. Every step distorted sound, the ocean's roar slowing, bird song reversing midair. Noah chased her, voice fading behind layers of wind that moved opposite to the tide. Evelyn's gaze never left the girl ahead, whose footsteps left no trace. The music box vibrated inside her pocket, unwound, yet alive. When she stopped, the girl turned and raised her hand. The wind silenced instantly, leaving only one sound, the low hum of the sea, transformed into melody. The cliff's edge pulsed with light, like a heartbeat beneath stone. Evelyn stood before the child, trembling. "Why me?" she whispered, but the question dissolved before reaching air. The girl's mouth opened, yet the voice that answered came from everywhere. The same melody, slowed and hollow, resonating from the cliffs below. Noah's flashlight flickered as the fog thinned, revealing shapes in the rock. Hundreds of figures etched into the cliff face, hands pressed outward as though reaching through stone. Their mouths were open in silent song. Evelyn fell to her knees, realizing the melody wasn't summoning spirits. It was keeping them contained. The box had been their prison, not their bridge. Noah begged Evelyn to stop, but the child stepped forward, hand extended toward the box. Against her own will, Evelyn withdrew it from her coat. The object pulsed faintly, resonating in rhythm with her heartbeat. The girl's expression softened, and the sound grew harmonic, notes blending into an unbearable harmony. The carved figures began to shift, their hands flexing within the stone. Evelyn screamed as light erupted from the box, each note striking the cliffs like a bell. "It's finishing the song!" Noah shouted, pulling her back. But the child's smile widened, serene, as the final measure rose like a wave, ready to break. The song ended abruptly, the light collapsing inward. Silence followed, complete, suffocating, eternal. The child was gone, the sea below stilled as though frozen. Evelyn dropped the box. It hit the ground without sound. Noah turned her toward him, shouting words that never reached her ears. She couldn't hear anything, only the faint echo inside her skull, the lullaby looping endlessly. Then the box began to hum again, rising in pitch, mimicking her breathing until it matched perfectly. Evelyn lifted her eyes toward the ocean and whispered through trembling lips, "It's not done yet." By the next evening, Ravenhurst itself had begun to breathe. The wind outside synchronized with the rhythm of the lullaby, pushing and retreating through every cracked window like the intake of lungs. The box now sat unopened on the table, yet the melody emanated from the walls. Evelyn recorded for hours, capturing impossible harmonics, tones that wove in out of human hearing, overlapping like whispered sentences. Noah's patience fractured. He smashed one of the microphones, yelling that the sound wasn't music, it was communication. Evelyn's reply was soft, almost prayerful. "Then we need to hear what it's saying." The walls answered with a low, resonant chord that rattled the chandelier. Evelyn began hearing the melody even in silence. It threaded through the creak of the stairs, the hum of electricity, the pulse in her veins. She scribbled equations, trying to quantify the intervals, but every line of data curved back into symmetry, numbers forming mirrored shapes like reflections in water. Noah noticed her murmuring to herself, lips moving in rhythm with no audible sound. When he confronted her, she didn't answer. Instead, she began to hum, a perfect replication of the music box tune, note for note, but reversed. The house went still. Then every window in the manor fogged at once, as though the building itself had drawn a single long breath. Later that night, Noah awoke to a sound like wind moving backward. He followed it to the hallway mirror, where his reflection lagged a heartbeat behind him. The air shimmered as if submerged underwater. From the mirror's depth, Evelyn's voice sang softly, each note distant yet clear. He turned, but she wasn't there. The reflection smiled, not his own, and reached toward him. Panicked, Noah smashed the glass. Instead of shattering, it rippled like liquid. The lullaby warped into dissonance. From the rippling surface, another hand began to emerge, small and translucent. The child's. Noah's scream brought Evelyn running. The mirror was intact again, but his reflection moved wrong, delayed by fractions of a second. He whispered that he could still feel her, the child, touching him. Evelyn's hands shook as she recorded the room's frequencies. The sensors spiked, mapping invisible waves that pulsed like heartbeats in every reflective surface. "It's using resonance to inhabit mirrors," she muttered. Her own reflection blinked before she did. Noah begged her to destroy the box, but it was too late. The lullaby echoed from every wall, every window, every pane of glass, surrounding them in an unending chorus of themselves. By midnight, the melody detached from every source. The air itself vibrated. Evelyn realized the house was no longer just haunted. It was alive, using her voice as conduit. She stood in the center of the parlor, recorder raised, demanding it show itself. The response came as vibration, then form. Walls bending inward, shadows knitting into shapes of faces, mouths open in frozen chorus. Noah backed away, whispering prayers. The sound rose into frequencies beyond hearing, and for one brief instant, Ravenhurst seemed to breathe in unison with her. The house inhaled, and Evelyn vanished. Noah searched the manor until dawn, calling Evelyn's name into rooms that no longer echoed. Every surface vibrated faintly, humming with her reversed voice. The silver music box sat at the parlor's center, lid open, gears unmoving. He touched it, and the walls trembled. A faint heartbeat pulsed through the floorboards, syncing with his own. He realized the melody hadn't taken her, it had absorbed her. Her voice wove through the air like dust in sunlight, repeating one phrase over and over. "I'm listening." Outside, the sea froze mid-motion, waves held by invisible hands. Ravenhurst was no longer haunted. It had become an instrument, waiting for someone to play. The following night, Ravenhurst's silence became unbearable. Noah replayed Evelyn's last recording. Instead of her voice, there came a low hum, an inverted version of the lullaby. He reversed the audio. The result was Evelyn speaking calmly, saying, "Finish the song." The message was clear, and so was his dread. He wound the box once. Its first notes rang hollow, but the room responded, shadows aligning, air thickening into resonance. For the first time, Noah understood that the melody wasn't a bridge for souls. It was a lock, and by playing it, Evelyn had left the gate open. As the melody climbed, Ravenhurst awakened. The wallpaper peeled in spirals, revealing veins of light pulsing through plaster. The furniture shifted, aligning symmetrically, as though obeying choreography. Noah staggered backward, watching faces form in the patterns. Hundreds, mouths, moving in silence. He screamed Evelyn's name, but the air swallowed his voice. A mirror shattered, and from its shards emerged her reflection, eyes calm, lips mouthing the tune. The music accelerated, folding space until the parlor seemed infinite. The melody was no longer sound. It was geometry, a looping corridor of echoes with no end. He followed the music upstairs, guided by light seeping through cracks in the ceiling. Every step echoed twice, delayed, as though another version of him walked just behind. In the attic, The child in white waited. Her eyes reflected starlight that shouldn't exist indoors. She lifted the music box from his shaking hands and placed it gently on the floor. "She's almost done," the girl whispered. Then her form dissolved into mist. The attic filled with the sound of breathing, hundreds of voices inhaling at once. Noah dropped to his knees as Evelyn's voice returned, whispering from every direction. "Thank you for listening." When the clock struck midnight, the final note played. The manor inhaled deeply, then exhaled everything it had ever held. Light erupted through every window, flooding the cliffs and the frozen sea below. For a single breath, the world stood still, and then silence, perfect and absolute. In the morning, the manor was gone. Only the table remained on the cliff's edge, the silver music box closed, untouched, its surface cold. Locals say you can still hear it on calm nights, a single note drifting from the fog, followed by a voice whispering, "I'm still listening."